All right, let's get right into this. It's a big question, isn't it? When someone really high profile, like a former prime minister, ends up getting medical treatment for a long time outside prison, well, who's actually accountable?
Yeah, it really throws you into the tricky parts of the justice system. This whole situation with Thaksin being treated on the 14th floor of the police general hospital after he's imprisoned, it's definitely raised a lot of questions. Legitimacy, process, all of it.
Totally. And we've really dug into a lot of sources to try and understand this. We're talking news reports from places like Post Today, Thai Post, Israel News, Thai PBS World.
The Fédération Internationale pour les Droits Humains, Nation, Thailand, Naina, Thai Publica, the mainstream, even a YouTube transcript from PPTV HD 36. Quite a mix.
Right. And just to be clear, our goal here isn't to, take sides or anything. We just want to unpack all the different layers of who's responsible when.
Exactly. Who has to answer for what? At which point in this whole process? And what does it tell us about the Thai legal system itself?
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. The first 30 days. What happens then? Who makes the call?
Well, according to Pranyathwana Rumatkul in Post Today, the initial call rests with the director of the special prison. They have the authority to say, okay, this person needs outside medical help.
But it's not just like carte blanche, right? There are conditions.
Oh, absolutely. The key thing is the prison hospital has to be unable to provide um, adequate care. That's the justification.
Adequate care, that sounds a bit subjective, maybe?
It can be, and that's why Prinya really emphasizes that the decision has to be based on clear and credible medical evidence, not just a hunch.
Got it. Solid proof. No room for error, ideally, because messing that up could mean negligence charges, right?
Precisely. That hangs over the decision maker right from the start. The evidence has to be solid.
Okay, so that's the first month. What happens if the treatment needs to go on longer?
After 30 days, the responsibility sort of levels up. Post Today tells us it then shifts to the Director General of the Department of Corrections.
The big boss of the prison system, basically.
Right. So a higher level of oversight kicks in for these longer-term situations.
Makes sense. And then what about as time goes on, like getting towards 3 months?
Yeah, at the 90-day mark, there's another check. The Director General doesn't just decide on their own anymore. They have to report up again
To who?
to the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Justice.
Hmm.
And it's not just a quick update. They need to provide, the full medical records, all the supporting documents.
So the top civil servant in the ministry gets involved, and what if they have doubts? If they look at the evidence and think, I'm not sure about this.
Well, that's the point. If the Permanent Secretary isn't convinced, if they think the evidence is shaky or maybe unreliable, then the responsibility kind of lands on them to dig deeper, to review it further.
Okay, so another potential point where things could be questioned or stopped.
Exactly. It's designed, in theory, as a check and balance, but, you can also see how delays or maybe even influence could potentially creep in at any of these stages.
And then we hit 120 days, 4 months. Does it go even higher?
It does. One more level. The Director General reports, again, submits updated medical evidence, but this time it goes directly to the Minister of Justice.
Wow, so right to the top political figure in the ministry.
Yep. And the minister has the final say, essentially, if they have reason to doubt the medical evidence. If they look at it and think it's not reliable, or maybe the whole process wasn't transparent,
Then they're responsible for the call.
they are. But, and this is important, if the minister looks at the evidence and finds it credible, trustworthy, then their direct responsibility for continuing the treatment kind of ends there.
So it always comes back to that medical evidence being sound.
Always. That's the bedrock. And like Prinya said, any failure at any stage misjudging the evidence, ignoring facts, could lead to negligence charges for whoever was responsible at that point. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, you can really see that. Okay, but let's shift gears a bit because this isn't just about the bureaucratic process, is it? There's a lot of political noise around this.
Oh, definitely. You got figures like Rangzamin Rome from the Move Forward Party. Thai Post reported on his perspective, and he's not buying the official story at all.
What's he saying?
He's basically alleging this whole thing was cooked up beforehand. He called it a devil deal, suggesting Thaksin's hospital stay wasn't about a real medical crisis, but was some kind of arrangement to, well, undermine the justice system.
A devil deal. That's strong language. What's his reasoning?
He makes a few points. One, he says it wasn't a genuine emergency in the first place. Two, he questions why Thaksin needed so long at the police hospital when there are, medical facilities within the prison system.
Okay.
And third, he points to reports about Thaksin having visitors, maybe even a phone, suggesting he wasn't exactly critically ill if he could do all that.
So basically challenging the entire premise of the hospital stay.
Pretty much. And those kinds of arguments, they definitely tap into public suspicion about, whether everyone gets treated equally by the system or if connections and status make a difference.
And it's not just politicians raising flags. The medical community itself got involved, right? Through the medical council.
Yes, that's a really significant part of this. Isra News, PPTV, PsyPublica all covered it. The medical council launched its own investigation into the doctors involved, looking at the ethics.
And did they find anything?
They did. And it's quite something. They ended up reprimanding one doctor for substandard professional conduct related to the initial referral.
Substandard conduct.
Yes, but even more seriously, they suspended the licenses of two other doctors.
Suspended. Wow.
For providing false medical information or issuing false medical certificates. That's a major breach of ethics.
False information. That seems to go right to the heart of what we were talking about earlier, the need for credible evidence.
Exactly. And adding to that, Professor Presit Watanapa, who's the vice president of the medical council, was quoted saying that the info they reviewed didn't actually show clear evidence of a critical condition.
So the medical body itself is saying the evidence didn't stack up for a critical illness justifying that long stay.
That seems to be the implication of his statement, yeah.
Yeah.
It casts serious doubt on the medical basis for the whole thing.
Is that decision final? The reprimand and suspensions?
Almost. The council's decision goes to the Special Medical Council president for approval, and that person is actually the Minister of Public Health. So another layer, this time within the health ministry.
It's like layer upon layer of oversight here.
It really is. Though, interestingly, Isra News mentioned that the names of the doctors who were disciplined haven't actually been made public yet. A bit of lack of transparency there, maybe?
Did any sources try to figure out which doctors were involved?
Well, the PPTV transcript had some interpretations. They speculated, and this is just speculation, mind you, that the reprimanded doctor might have been from the prison hospital, perhaps for sending Thaksin out without a thorough enough check first. And they guessed the two suspended doctors were probably from the police hospital itself, potentially for providing the inaccurate info that justified him staying there so long. Again, interpretations, but it points fingers at potential issues in both places.
Yeah, it suggests it wasn't just one person, but maybe flaws in the system at different points. But okay, moving beyond the medical council. The courts are involved now too, right? The Supreme Court.
Yes, and this is a really big deal. The Supreme Court's criminal division for holders of political positions, specifically, has decided it needs to investigate directly. Nation, Thailand, Nayuna, PsyPublica all reported on this.
Investigate what exactly?
Whether Thaksin was actually genuinely ill during that whole hospital period, they're cutting through the other layers and looking at the core question themselves.
Wow, so what are they doing?
They've ordered Thaksin himself, plus the prison chief in Bangkok, the head of the corrections department, and the chief medical officer at the police hospital, basically all the key players to hand over all relevant evidence.
And they have a deadline.
Yep, 30 days. And they've set a hearing date, too, for June 13th.
Yeah.
So things are moving, and the legal pressure is definitely ramping up.
Who prompted the court to do this? Did someone file a new case?
It's interesting how it happened. There's this individual, Chanachaya Sarasanarak, Nayuna, PsyPublica. The mainstream talked about his role. He had been petitioning the court for a while.
Arguing what?
Arguing that Thaksin hadn't really served his sentence because of the hospital stay. Now, initially, the court actually dismissed his petitions.
Oh. So why are they acting now?
Because the court decided to act on its own authority. They used a phrase like, bringing the matter to the court's attention. Nation Thailand and PsyPublica highlighted this. It basically means the judges themselves felt there was enough reason to investigate, even without a formal petition being accepted at that point.
That sounds like the court itself has serious concerns.
It certainly suggests a lack of confidence, perhaps, in the information provided through the standard channels up until now. The judiciary stepping in directly is quite significant.
Okay, let's zoom out for a second. This specific case, it feels like it touches on wider anxieties, doesn't it? About fairness in the system generally.
Absolutely. There was that report by FIDH, the International Human Rights Group, and University College London. It talked about broader issues like inequality and double standards in how prisoners are treated in Thailand.
And Thaksin's case became a kind of symbol of that.
Exactly. It became a very high-profile example that fueled those existing concerns about, whether wealth and status get you different treatment even behind bars, It brought international attention to it, too.
And politically, has this whole thing had ripple effects?
Nation Thailand suggested it has. They argued it's kind of forced Thaksin onto the defensive politically. And it definitely affects the delicate dance between him, the Pheu party, and the conservative establishment in Thailand. The long-term impact is still playing out.
Yeah, you really get the sense of politics, law, and public perception all swirling around this one situation.
For sure. And like the mainstream pointed out, it really brings us back to that core issue. Is this about fairness and accountability for everyone? Or does it show a system where maybe privilege still plays a big role?
It's the fundamental question, isn't it? Equal treatment under the law.
That's what's being tested here in the public eye.
Okay, so just to wrap up the key threads here, we've got this step-by-step accountability system for medical leave, but then serious questions raised about whether it was followed properly.
Fueled by political allegations of a devil deal, then backed up, to some extent, by the medical council finding ethical breaches and potentially false medical info.
And now the Supreme Court is stepping in to conduct its own investigation into whether Thaksin was even sick.
Yeah, it's a situation where accountability is being examined from multiple angles, legally, ethically, politically.
So here's something for you, the listener, to really chew on after this deep dive. When you look at everything we've discussed, does this case tell you more about the unique circumstances surrounding Thaksin himself? Or does it actually expose something deeper, maybe more systemic, about how justice works or sometimes doesn't work in Thailand?
And tied to that, what does it really mean for that principle we just mentioned, equal treatment for everybody under the law? Is that principle holding up here, or is it being bent? That's the big takeaway question, I think.